Cheers. Before we talk about this topic, let's drink. Oh, that's smooth.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is really good. So to give a little context, we literally just got this in
the
mail.
last episode that we were filming. Thank you, Amazon. This is delicious.
This is awesome. I love that you got us a big bottle. This is so cool.
Man. Yeah, thank you so much.
I am slightly sad that we're drinking this so soon because I think this would taste really good chilled.
Well, don't worry. We have plenty for the next episode we're going to film. So we'll chill this.
I'm looking forward to trying it chilled, but it's still really good.
It is good.
It's like, I don't know why I'm getting like a honey taste.
It is. It does have like a honey aftertaste to it a bit. Yeah, I get that. Yeah. So.
Oh man.
So thank you, Samsung. I really appreciate it. So I want to put this on our wish list too. If someone wants to buy this again, not this big bottle, but like.
I mean, you could just get the big bottle.
Yeah, you could get the big bottle.
But no, please, by all means, you don't have to.
Yeah.
But this is amazing. Yeah. I really like this.
So just so I don't tip it over, I'm going to just put this on the floor because we have a lot of it.
We have our thing.
Yeah.
What is this called?
It's called Chiozuru.
Chiozuru.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, M-san, for the Chiozuru. It's delicious.
Yeah.
I'm going to like this.
Yeah, I was pointing at this, by the way.
Oh, this one? I don't know what this is called.
Oh, okay.
It's called a sake pourer.
Oh, sake pourer.
Yeah. So we're in great spirits, but we have a very contentious topic today.
Dude, I'm just hyped up from our last episode, so I'm bringing out the boxing gloves.
Yeah.
I'm like, let's go.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think we have different opinions so much on this topic, but we are talking about gun culture in the United States.
This is for our thumbnail.
Yeah, so please make the thumbnail. Yeah. Okay, so first, before we get into to what you want to talk about, I just want to say I feel like a lot of Japanese people have misconceptions about guns.
Oh, yeah, they do.
The one thing that I just want to share is that gun laws are different according to state, and some states are pretty strict.
Yeah.
Like,
and some states just don't really have them.
I know. Like, hey, you can go to a gun show and just buy one.
If you want a 50 cal machine gun and want to fire it in your backyard, move to Idaho.
Yeah.
Because you can do that.
Whereas
you can fire an RPG.
Yeah. But in Massachusetts, right? So where I'm from, Massachusetts, first you have to, before you can buy a gun, you have to get a gun license to like train. Well, actually, technically you can buy a gun, but you're not allowed to like use it or something until you get a license. Yeah. And then you also have to do like a psychological background check to make sure you're not crazy. Yeah. And then
completely agree with.
And then you have to do gun training so that you're also proficient with it. And then after that, you can get the gun. But when you have the gun in your house, you have to store it in a locked container, and the gun has to be in a separate container from the ammo. So it's funny because people talk about having guns for self-defense, but if you live in Massachusetts, if someone comes in and tries to rob your house, you have to first get the 2 boxes, unlock both of them, then put it together, and then you can shoot the guy.
Yeah.
And by that time, it's already too late, you know?
It could be. So I'm just going to preface things by saying I'm just going to directly state my position on guns. I love guns. Mm-hmm. I absolutely love them. I love rifles. I love machine guns. I love hunting rifles. I love muskets. I love pistols. I love everything. Mm-hmm. I come from a military background. Mm-hmm. I used a lot of really fun guns in the military. Mm-hmm. And I love gun culture in America. Mm-hmm. And I know that's probably going to get some flack. Yeah. But I absolutely love it. I think it's a really integral part of American culture.
It is.
And
now the question is why? Because a lot of people are like, why would you guys have guns? Like, what's the big deal?
So in order to answer that question, I need to go back and explain some part of American history. Yeah. Okay. So right off the bat, I'm going to say America is a war country. Mm-hmm. Okay. I've mentioned it a few times on the podcast that, America has been at war. I think, out of its history, there's only been like 30 years at this point that America has not been at war with another country. Yeah. And I'm not saying that I love war. Mm-hmm. It's a really terrible thing, and I don't want to be I don't want America or any other country to be at war. But what I'm saying is that has influenced the culture in the U.S. significantly.
Yeah.
You know, growing up as kids, what do kids play with? They play with guns, water guns. Yeah. Right. You grow up playing shooters and video games, like shooting. You see guns everywhere.
Actually,
in American culture.
Just stop you because my because now it's the middle of summer, it's really hot, and so I got water guns for my son and stuff.
Right.
And you know what's funny is there are some people that have like the super soaker water guns, whatever. Yeah. But there's a decent amount of people who have like these pumps. Like, have you seen them? They're like little noodles like that you like squeeze and you boom. Yeah. I'm like, that would never fly in America. They're like, get out a gun, man, and just water gun it up, you know?
Yeah, yeah. You know, like I remember as a kid like running around with super soakers.
Yeah.
My childhood friend, we had this like mounted backpack.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. It had like the hose attached to the gun.
And then the giant gun was like as big
cool.
as you were. Yeah.
It looked so cool. If you had that, you were like the coolest kid in the neighborhood. Yeah. Right? And it was so much fun. And so there's all this gun culture that you grow up with. Yeah. And you know, it's a really divisive thing in America. Not all Americans like guns, but the history with guns is a really big deal. So America was founded with a declaration of war. Yeah. And that's a really weird thing to say because that's not a common thing for a country to begin with. You know, you look at a country that like that's old, like Japan or you know, the United Kingdom or, you know, a lot of other countries like that. They founded after like basically a bunch of really small kingdoms all kind of came together and went, yeah, we should kind of start thinking of ourselves as a country. Yeah. You know, this will allow us to protect ourselves because we're all banding together to be this one big group. Well, that didn't happen in America. America used to be a colony that was controlled by by Britain at the time. And so the very first day that America declared itself as a country, that same day was also a declaration of war against Britain.
Well, it's like, are you talking about like, is it the Declaration of Independence you're talking about? Yeah. Yeah. So it's funny because in America, one of the official founding document of the United States is the Constitution. Yeah. But before that, we have the Declaration of Independence, which is basically saying humans deserve to be free. Yep. The King of England is not letting us be free.
Screw you, King.
We're going to war. We're our own country now. Right.
And so, before this, I'm going to give, I love U.S. history, so it's really easy for me to talk about this. But before this, you have to understand what Americans were. They were people who were going to a new unexplored land, unexplored from the context of Europeans, right? Obviously, Native Americans lived there. They were going to an unexplored land. It was extremely dangerous. Like something people in Japan don't understand is how dangerous the wilds in America are. There's extremely poisonous plants, extremely venomous animals. Bears, brown bears are like grizzly 3 times the size of a black bear here in Japan. They're huge. Yeah. And if you shoot them with a musket, they just get angry. Yeah. That won't kill them. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like the Lewis and Clark, maybe people in Japan don't know who they are, but they're very famous explorers.
So Lewis and Clark, basically, they were some of the explorers who explored the western part of the United States. Did they get to the Pacific Ocean?
They did. Yeah. They did. And they're anyways, they're really famous. So they had a grizzly bear enter their camp. Yeah. Do you know how many times they shot the grizzly bear with muskets? And
how many times?
Keep in mind, a musket is a ball that's this size.
Okay. How many times?
41.
41 times.
41 times they had to shoot the bear to kill it.
Man.
Isn't that insane?
That is insane.
Right? So they're big. They're very, very aggressive. They're very dangerous. America is a very dangerous place to go into the wilds. People die every year. And, you know, when settlers from Europe just showed up, initially they were very friendly with the Native Americans. However, relations got really bad very quickly, and there was why. Well, you know, white people kind of do that.
Yes.
But so early Americans started fighting with the Native Americans. There was a huge thing called the French and Indian War.
Yeah, right.
America went to war with Mexico. They went to war with Canada. They went to war with Britain. There was all of these early conflicts that made kind of like what people think is a cowboy culture.
Yeah.
Right? Guns have always been there with Americans. Like you can't take away the identity of guns and Americans. Yeah. Like it's so integral to like who we are.
Yeah, well, one of the interesting things too is that actually in the founding documents, the Constitution of the United States, there's a place that people interpret saying the people have the right to have guns.
Well, so that's a really confusing one for a lot of non-Americans to look at. Like, okay, well, I don't understand why this exists. Well, you have to think of it from the context of Americans that were under British rule. Because if you think from that context, they hate the government, right? They don't like that England's taking all of their things and charging everyone with these taxes. And the only way that they can resist is by protecting themselves and saying no. Well, you can't do that without guns. Yeah. Because the army just comes in and stops you. Yeah. And here's another thing, is it's not only foreign. So this was in I want to say the early 1900s. I want to say like somewhere around 1910. I might be wrong. It might have been 100 years before. Yeah. But
1910 is 100 years.
No. I mean before that.
Okay.
But basically, I don't know the exact details. Well, I do, but I don't remember them. But basically, there was this guy who was getting unjustly charged on his farm. Okay. So he was a farmer in this area. I forget which state, but basically he was getting unjustly charged for this, and he's
charged for what?
For his crops.
He was being forced to pay too much money.
So yes, so he was selling his crops to the government, and I think what happened was the government just didn't pay him. Yeah. And he was like, okay, well, if you're not going to pay me, I'm not giving you my crops. Yeah. And so the U.S. government said, you have to. Yeah. And he said, no, it's my farm. You can't get it. Yeah. And so what happened? The U.S. Army showed up to his farm. Yeah. And he told this to his local town and said, the government's coming to my farm to take my crops. All the people showed up at his farm with guns and armed, and actually made the army decide not to do that. Okay. And the government ended up paying him. Oh, wow. And so it's situations like that that people point to the Second Amendment and go, this is why we need this. Because in a perfect world, the government is this nice thing that takes care of everyone and is not this bad thing. But here's all these historical situations where the government has just been tyrannical. Yeah. And the only way people can stand up to the government is using guns.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially now is in like really developed societies, and especially in a society that's super safe like Japan. Yeah. It's really hard to understand this, but the only thing that stops someone from hurting you or stealing stuff from you is they're afraid that they're going to get hurt too, you know? Yes. Like we talk about how we want to be nice and we want to be generous to people, but that really only comes out of free and safe societies. And how do you keep those free and safe societies? You have a big guy at the top who is allowed to use violence to push people, because in the end, it's like what have we done as a society? We have given the right of violence to the police or to a third party to kind of overlook the society that we're in. Yeah. But it really goes down to, okay, who's allowed to throw the punch? Who's allowed to throw the hurt? And if according to like the way Americans think, if the citizens aren't able to throw any punches, then the bigger guy has the right to do whatever they want. Yes. And so, because that's just how the world works.
That's the mentality of Americans right there. You know, to quote Teddy Roosevelt, president from the early 1900s, his really famous saying is "Walk softly and carry a big stick."
Carry a big stick, yeah.
He's obviously not talking about a stick. He means a gun.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. So just talk about I was born in Germany. Yeah, spent a long time in Europe. Went to Europe a lot. My dad and my family, we spent a long time in Europe. And it's funny because a lot of Europeans, you know, it's fashionable to hate on the US, like, oh, the US has their military bases everywhere. The US is the bully that's having us in these agreements and stuff. But
hey guys, we're interrupting this awesome podcast with the two of us to tell you about a really special thing. It's called the Austin and Arthur Friends.
In the Austin and Arthur Friends, you're going to get this video with English and Japanese subtitles. 日本語と英語の字幕両方ついている動画もゲットできるんですね。You can also get a PDF script so you can read along with it. You'll get the video, the long conversation in separate videos, so it's easier for you to watch as well. You'll also get access to a 会員限定 online community and also opportunities to talk directly with me and Austin.
Yeah, you know, because we're really fun to talk to.
Well, I am. Austin's really boring.
That's a lie. It's the opposite.
He's correct. I'm the boring one.
All right. Bye, guys.
See ya.
There's some truth there.
There is some truth there. But with Russia moving in and with all of these new threats happening, people are starting to be a lot more warmer to the US.
Yeah.
You know?
You actually see the same thing here in Japan. Where I'm gonna bring this up because as a former Marine, I have connection with Okinawa. The local people in Okinawa hate Marines. They hate the Marine Corps bases over there. Not everyone, but mostly, right? Whereas you look at polls and opinions of the U.S. military taken around Japan outside of Okinawa, it's almost the opposite. Obviously there's going to be some people who are anti-military, especially here in Japan. Is a very historically anti-military country, at least in the past few decades. But it's overwhelmingly supportive of the U.S. military outside of Okinawa.
Yeah, so I mean that makes sense.
Yeah.
So bringing it back to gun culture in the United States. So, you know, my mom is from the South, and in the South, they have a lot of people have guns. Not really where I'm from, Boston, but So what do people use guns for? It's not just for self-protection.
Yeah. So so there's a few things that people use guns for, right? Obviously, like you said, the first one's protection. I would say that's the primary reason.
Another thing that people have to remember too is that America is really thinly populated. Like, the population density is very low. And so a lot of times, if someone is coming to harm you or steal from you, if you call the police, they're coming in 15 minutes.
If that.
Yeah. So you have to protect yourself. That's kind of the mindset of these people, you know?
Yeah. And there's also a mindset, you brought this up earlier, but I want to kind of highlight it, of I'm thinking of South Park. If anyone knows South Park, because there's a gun episode of South Park where everyone's pointing guns at each other, and everyone kind of works through this therapy, and there's all this peace and happiness because everyone's pointing guns at each other. But that's kind of how it is, though. Right? Because there's this preconceived feeling of, I don't want to try and do something because you might have a gun. And I don't want to get shot. I might want to steal something of yours, but I don't want to get shot. And there's a lot of mentality with that. Now, you could argue, is that good? Should we be looking at our society and asking ourselves why a person wants to steal? Of course. But the reality is, there are people who want to steal and hurt you in America. It's a dangerous place. That's the reality of things. And
that's one of the reasons why I want to live here with my kids.
Exactly. It's the same with me. I don't want to raise my daughter in America. I love America.
When they get older, that's a different story.
I'm really supportive of America. I think that a lot of Japanese people, if they have the opportunity, should visit and or live in America. It's great. But it's not a safe place, right? And gun culture kind of works both sides of that, right? It's safer because of guns, but it is also not safer because of guns, right? So then, you hear a lot of people talk about okay, well, there's so many problems with guns. We just need to ban guns. And, they, a lot of examples are given up where they, bring up school shootings. Because unfortunately, school shootings are a really common thing in America. So common that, they're not really getting attention these days.
Well, So I understand a lot of school shootings happen and they shouldn't happen. But another thing that I see that comes up in the shooting statistics is people say there were X amount of mass shootings in America.
Yes.
First of all, a mass shooting is more than 4 people I think get like shot.
That. Yeah.
So it's when we think of mass shooting, we think of like
dozens
lot of people, right?
Right.
So
it's a little disingenuous.
Yeah. But the majority of that is also gang violence in the cities.
It's very true.
Like the vast majority of that.
That's not something that really gets talked about.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And so when you talk about like the mass shootings happening between criminals fighting each other, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's because I remember when I first looked at the statistics of like, wow, there's that many mass shootings in America. And then I looked at the details. I'm like, oh, it's not as bad as I thought.
Yeah.
You know?
So there's that thing to talk about. And I mean, I don't think anybody would disagree that school shootings are bad.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's just an objective truth.
Yeah.
Right. You know, you get stuff with like, you know, the presidential campaign with, you know, former President Donald Trump getting shot over the weekend, a week and a half ago.
Yeah.
You know, America has a really long history of presidential assassinations.
Yeah.
Or assassination attempts.
Well, Japan does too, actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, you look at former Prime Minister Abe. Was it 2 years ago?
Yeah.
You know, he was assassinated. So there's a lot of gun culture that goes in there that's really bad. And you can look at it objectively and go, this is not good.
Yeah.
Right. Here's the thing.
Yeah.
You look at it, I'm going to express my opinion here. You look at all of these events. You look at problems in today that are caused by guns. And it's really easy to quickly look at, in my opinion, knee-jerk reactions. You know, I remember, so I'm going to bring up I think it was the Columbine shooting.
Yeah, right. Back in like 2000 or something. Yeah,
it was like 2000s or 90s or whatever. Where I think that kid listened to Eminem.
Yeah.
Maybe that wasn't Columbine, but there was a couple mass shootings where it's like someone listened to Eminem and another person said they played Doom, which is a shooting video game for those who don't know. And there's like all these like immediate kind of, in my opinion, knee-jerk reactions like, oh, okay, well, you know, it's because of this. This is why this person did this. It's because of this. This is why this person did this. It's because of this. This is why. So we shouldn't have guns. We shouldn't have rap music. We shouldn't have video games. And it's like, no, that's not the problem here.
Yeah.
That's not the problem here. The problem is, first of all, we have individuals who are not getting treated for their mental health.
Yeah.
Right. And mental health treatment is terrible in the US. It's even, in my opinion, it's even worse here in Japan.
Yeah.
But it's still terrible in the US. The second problem is it's too easy to get a gun in America. So a lot of people who aren't educated with guns think that you can just pick up a gun and just become like, you know, some sniper guy and just be really good at shooting and stuff. That's not true. It takes a lot of training. It takes a lot of knowledge and experience to be able to correctly use and maintain a gun, right? And that's what you learn in the military. It's like, it took me 3 months in the Marine Corps to go through boot camp to understand how to use a gun. It took me an additional 6 months of training after that to become proficient with weapons, right? And that kind of thing is really common in the military, right? Most people, regardless of your job, you go through experience on how to use guns. Let me give you some other context. I had a roommate named Brian in college. And Brian was a really nice guy, but he was lazy. And he moved to Everett, which, I mean, if you're from Seattle, you know Everett's kind of a sketchy area, right? And he wanted to buy a pistol to protect himself because he's living right next to the Boeing plant in kind of, I'm not going to say it's the projects, but it's like low-income housing, right? It's a really kind of not safe area. So he buys himself a pistol. Fair enough. He doesn't go through any gun training at all. He gets his pistol I want to say just a few months after deciding to purchase it. And one night he's cleaning his gun, fully loaded. He didn't take out the ammunition.
What?
And shoots himself in the foot.
What?
He shot himself in the foot because he was improperly handling that weapon.
Yeah.
He wasn't going to die from it, but the main thing is he shot himself in the foot. The bullet actually went through his floor and into the apartment below him. Now, luckily, it didn't hit anybody.
Yeah, right.
Thank God. But that could have.
Yeah.
Why did that happen? Because he's an idiot.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, he didn't get training, and that gun was given to him without any sort of like license or anything. He just walked up and purchased it.
You can do that in Washington State.
You can do that anywhere in America. You don't need a license. Well, I mean, okay, no, let me take that back. You need a license for a gun, but that's just an application.
Yeah.
You know? And he actually did that twice, by the way.
Wow.
He shot himself in the foot again, doing the exact same thing because he's an idiot.
So,
right?
So but here's the thing, right? So, like I said, back where we're in Massachusetts, right?
Sure.
So you need to go through like background checks and stuff before you can get a weapon.
So
you can,
yeah. You still have to do that in Seattle. But so one of the things, one of my problems with gun culture in America is you can get a gun too easily.
Well, so here's the thing too. So like in Massachusetts, where it's really strict to get a gun.
Yeah.
You can go to the next state over, New Hampshire, where
and just bring it back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like what a lot of like gang members, what they'll do is they'll have their girlfriends who don't have a record. They'll go up to New Hampshire, buy the guns, come back and give it to their boyfriends, you know?
Yeah. And that is like objectively, like no one can look at that and think that that's okay.
Yeah.
Here's my thing, right? I want to turn the focus over to cars.
Yeah.
Okay? If I were to say, Arthur, do you think it's okay for a person to just go out to a car dealership and buy a car with no experience with cars and drive around?
Yeah, it's very dangerous.
Yeah, no shit, right?
Yeah.
Like, no one would be okay with this. Everyone would be like, no, of course. No. A person should not be allowed to do that. Well, that's what's allowed to do. That's what's allowed with guns right now, right? A person, you need a gun license to carry a concealed weapon.
Yeah, what does that mean? Carry a concealed weapon?
So a concealed weapon is a weapon that if you look at a person, you can't visibly see it.
Yeah.
You need a license for that. You do not need a license to own a gun.
Yeah. So you need a license to hide it when you go out in public.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that's my problem with gun culture in America right now is you get people who have no experience, who didn't go through, because you go through so much training when you're getting your driver's license. Yeah. You go through driver's ed, you go through driver's school, you have to pass like a driving test, a written test. You have to be a certain age to own a gun, which in some states there's an age limit.
Yeah.
You have to be 18. In some states it's 21, but like honestly, what does an 18-year-old need a gun for?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's all these things where it's just like there's no regulation or control over who's using them.
But the pro-gun people, though, they would say, but driving a car is not in our Constitution.
Yeah.
Having guns, which, by the way, depending on your interpretation of the Second Amendment where it talks about guns, it's either saying the right to bear arms as an individual or the right to bear arms in like a local military group.
Like we need to fill this up again.
Yeah, well, we're almost done. We have a couple
fair
minutes.
enough.
So they so a lot of people are arguing that the Second Amendment is not about individuals having the right to own guns. It's about having each state will have its own militia that can then train people.
Here's where I disagree with that. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm disagreeing with that argument.
Yeah.
I think that is a weak argument because if you look at the historical context of like where I brought up that farmer, and I'm sorry I don't remember his name. I'm just bringing up that information. But if you look it up, it's a very clear. It's like one of the defending parts of gun quality or gun control. I mean, if you have a militia, well, here's the problem: is the militia still part of the state government? Yeah. Right. They're still an entity that is attached to the government. Okay. Here's a problem. If you are being oppressed by the state government, what do you do in that situation if you don't have a gun?
Right.
Okay? You can't do anything. If the state government comes up and is like, you're going to listen to what I say, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, right. So then, okay, so going back to the Second Amendment protects individual gun rights in a way that it doesn't protect car rights. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
So based on that, what would your, to end this discussion, what would be your ideal gun control laws?
So I would treat guns the same way you treat alcohol and cars. Okay. First of all, I don't think anyone under the age of 21 should be allowed to own a gun. Secondly, I think there should be extremely strict laws. Okay. It should be something
even if it's a constitutional right?
Yes.
Okay.
Because it is a right.
Yeah.
It is a right that you have, which can get taken away if, like, you have a right to vote. However, if you have felonies, guess what you aren't allowed to do?
You can't vote anymore, right? Yeah, okay.
So guess what? If you have a criminal record at all, no guns.
Okay.
Right? And I think that's what the United States needs to do. They need to go in and say, okay, people can have guns. Because I think gun culture is so part of what like American identity that you just can't remove it.
Yeah.
But you need to make it so these people who are not mentally stable can hold a gun. And you need to also make it so if somebody gets a gun, because I don't think there's any like U.S. veterans or a police people that are going on mass shootings.
Yeah.
I might be wrong about this, but I don't think that's happening, right? I don't think people who are experienced with handling weapons are hurting people.
Yeah.
I think the thing is you get either people who are mentally unstable or you get people who are so negligent and irresponsible that it should be illegal for them to have a gun.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you're saying it kind of be like what we do in Massachusetts where you get like a background check. You also get a not a mental aptitude, but like check to make sure you're not.
And not only that, but like, here's the thing. You have to renew your driver's license, right?
That is true. Yeah.
And I think there's been some things for like senior citizens where they have to retake a driving test after a certain amount of time. Guns should be the same thing. It shouldn't be a one and done thing where it's like, okay, I passed my test, I have my gun, no one's gonna check me now. Yeah. This should be a constant thing. Like, hey, look, how are things going? We're gonna do a little vibe check.
Yeah.
Are you feeling sad right now? Yeah. That's a red flag. Yeah. You know, that should be something that. And, you know, I think people who are really, really on the side of gun culture in America, because you get a lot of people on kind of more the conservative side that are like really hardcore guns that like, no, there should be no regulation. Stop trying to control our rights as Americans. It's like, you guys need to like calm down. Yeah. You need to be able to give a little bit of ground to the opposing side and go, there are problems. Yeah. Okay. There's school shootings. There's mass shootings. You know, a former president was almost assassinated in the year 2024, which is insane. Yeah. That should not happen. Yeah. You know, and you can say like all these problems with the Secret Service and everything. It's like, yeah, okay. Yeah,
but the kid had a gun.
At the end of the day, there was a kid with a gun that shot a former president of the United States. That should not happen. Yeah. Right. And there's all these little checks and balances where it's like, okay, well, if he just wasn't able to access a gun as easily as he did, would that have happened? Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. So
we'll find out. I'm really curious to think about what all of you guys who are watching this or listening to this think. Yeah. Let us know in the comments because I would love to.
Yeah, I'm actually really curious. If I'm being honest, I expect us to get a little bit of flack on this episode because I know
this video might get demonetized, but it's okay.
Yeah, we probably will. We talked about guns on YouTube. It probably is getting demonetized. Yeah. But a lot of people I talk to here in Japan are very anti-gun.
Yeah, right.
And many people I talk to are really confused as to why some Americans, I should say, love guns. Yeah.
So I hope this cleared it up a little bit.
I hope it does. I hope because like the whole thing, and I think the thing with our show is we're trying to bridge the gap between American culture and Japanese culture, and also with our personal lives too. And you know, especially like with our previous episode, things get a lot of like debates and stuff, but like I think Arthur and I are really trying to focus on like providing an understanding of the other side of things.
Right.
I think that's kind of where we're coming from on this, right?
Yeah.
And so I hope you guys enjoyed this.
Yeah. Wonderful. All right, man. Well, I'll see you next time.
Yeah.